Welcome to the January 19, 2021 City Council meeting. Please call roll.
Dayline.
Here.
Soldner.
Here.
Bagwell.
Here.
Garza.
Here.
Pyrus de Carvalho.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Paul Brown will be giving this morning's prayer. Thank you, Paul.
Would you join me in prayer? Heavenly Father, we thank you that you are here for us, and we are certainly have a great need. Lord, we want to pray for all the new legislative bodies that are taking place. There's changes in Washington, changes in Topeka, and we especially pray for our council. We lift them up to you. I pray that you would continue to guide them. Lord, there are still many in need. We pray for those who are struggling financially because of these times. There are many businesses that are suffering and families and individuals. So we pray for their needs. Lord, we thank you most of all for your Son, Jesus Christ. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
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 Amen. Next item, please.
Item 4, election of mayor.
I nominate Steve Garza for mayor.
Second. Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Dayline.
Yes.
Soldner.
Yes.
Bagwell.
Yes.
Garza.
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 5, election of vice mayor.
I nominate Sarah Bagwell as vice mayor. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Dayline.
Yes.
Hold on, sorry. I messed up here. Soldner.
Yes.
Bagwell.
Abstain.
Garza.
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho.
Yes, at this time I believe we'd like to administer the oath of office. Okay. And we'll do a little bit of a shuffle up here.
Okay.
So, Steve, would you come down, please? Steve? No, go ahead. I don't know if you want to get up there with them or.
Hold up. Can I have my family behind me?
Sure.
Come on, guys. Come on.
Do you need me to take a picture of everybody?
Yes.
please.
Okay, sure.
They're my strength. They're my back.
All right, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Steve Garza,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the State of Kansas,
of the State of Kansas,
the ordinances
the ordinances
of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas,
of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas,
and that I will faithfully
and I will faithfully
perform the duties
and perform the duties
of mayor
of mayor
for the City of Hutchinson,
of the City of Hutchinson,
so help me God.
so help me God. Thank you.
Congratulations, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have a big thing.
Sir, do you want me to get your picture on your phone?
Huh?
You want me to get your picture on your phone?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you. Being unlocked.
Okay, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
I, Sarah Bagwell,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the State of Kansas,
of the State of Kansas,
the ordinances
the ordinances
of the City of Hutchinson,
of the
Kansas,
City of Hutchinson, Kansas,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
perform the duties
perform the duties
of Vice Mayor
of Vice Mayor
for the City of Hutchinson,
for the City of Hutchinson,
so help me God.
so help me God. Thank you very much. I took video too.
Oh, thank you.
Looking down at my phone.
When did,
I get the pictures you have all through,
okay.
so I didn't switch them.
That's
Mayor and
okay.
council, we'll switch that
We'll
next
switch later.
time. We'll have
Okay.
the nameplates in the right spots and have you situated at the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. That way we don't have to wipe everything down.
Yes. Good thinking.
Okay, it's all you, Steve.
So I take over here?
Yep.
Okay, well, nominees are done. Next item, please.
Item 6, oral communications from the audience.
At this time, we're gonna have oral communications, but I think it's on the phone, am I right?
Yes.
Do we have any, 5 minutes?
They'll let us know if
Okay.
you have any calls.
Okay, next item, please.
Item 7, consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Call a roll?
Iris De Carvalho,
Yes.
Dateline,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Bagwell,
Yes.
Garza.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8, public hearing to review CDBG CV grant and approve the closeout of the grant.
I would move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Iris De Carvalho,
Yes.
Dateline,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Bagwell,
Yes.
Garza.
Yes. All right.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. So you will see a lot of me here this morning. I think I'm literally on like the next 5 items. So
This is
just for the
Ryan's
record,
day.
Ryan Vietlich, Director of Planning and Development with the City of Hutchinson. Before you this morning is a public review and closeout of the CDBG CV grant. Wanted to kind of start with a little bit of the summary of it, and then we can go into any questions that y'all may have or the members of the public may have. So back in June of 2020, the city received a $132,000 grant from the Kansas Department of Commerce. This was a grant to help small businesses of 1 to 50 employees with at least 51% of their employees coming from low to medium income households. With the $132,000, $120,000 was actually set aside to award for grants. $12,000 was required to be set aside, 10% of it for, or a little bit less than 10%, excuse me, for administrative cost. So the city went out for bid, and SCED was our grant administrator, and they've been very helpful through this whole process of making sure that documents get submitted to the state on time and all those requirements. With the $120,000, we were able to award 20 small businesses. Those grants range anywhere from $1,000 to $20,000 depending on their need as well as the impact from COVID. These funds could be used to reimburse several different expenses, everything from utilities, payroll, rent, marketing, and up to 60 days of inventory for reopening their businesses. And then finally, as this is, the whole point of this was economic development, 83 jobs were actually retained using these funds. So it really has been incredible, how much these funds have really helped our local businesses, and some kind of unexpected things. I may have mentioned this previously, but several of our businesses were very small or very new businesses, and the requirements for paperwork and documentation and all that, actually I heard from several business owners that it made them actual better business owners, and now they actually have better books and things like that, and they're actually able to now go to our local banks and use their cleaned up books and their better books to actually now go get additional capital. So it kind of had an unexpected benefit. So we're really excited. We're happy we were able to get this out. We were able to get these funds out very quickly, and I want to thank the finance department for their help with getting these checks out quickly to our businesses. And we will continue to keep our ear to the ground, and if we hear of additional grant opportunities, we certainly will continue to pursue those. So with that, I will pause for any comments from the public or any comments from the council.
I just want to thank you for all your hard work to make sure that this was an easy process for our local and small businesses. And kudos to you to help, because I know with all that paperwork and navigating new things with new people, I just want to commend you for your efforts to make this a smooth and easy grant.
Thank you.
Or as smooth and easy as possible.
As federal grants can be.
Yeah.
I'm curious if, this is somewhat unrelated, but do we know if the county was able to expend all of their grant funds?
I believe today, actually, on their county commission agenda, they were going to program their last one. So
Oh,
yes, I believe they were actually
fantastic.
successful in
Good.
finally getting those grant funds spent down as well.
Great. Well, I know it's been a slog, so
Mm.
thanks.
See from the screen, this is from 220, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna have something again in 221 like this, or?
It's hard to know. I think with the new administration, obviously, the Biden administration has indicated that they would like to see additional, maybe another similar type of CARES funding, but I don't think until we know what's going to happen in Washington, if that would happen. The state has mentioned that they may go out for a second round of this, but my understanding would be that those funds would probably go to other communities that did not receive in the first round. So, but yeah, certainly, as I said, we continue to keep our ear to the ground, and if we hear of great opportunities, we certainly will be aggressive in pursuing those.
Tell me, how do they pick the counties who gets, or cities who gets the opportunity to have these grants?
So the first time around, it was actually first come, first serve. We literally found out, I think, on a Friday afternoon, and we're able to pull together a committee with the chamber, Startup Hutch, a couple of council members, and we were able to actually pull that committee together in less than a week and get an application out. So with a lot of these grants, the intent is to get that money out as quickly as possible. So it really does help that we've got a really responsive business community that really helped us kind of navigate that. So.
One other question I'm thinking in my mind is, so we can apply for it again, but probably not necessarily we're gonna get it because we already got one, right, you think?
Yeah, I mean, we'll just have to kind of see where that all goes. But as I said, anything that we're eligible for, we will try to apply
Okay.
for.
Well, is there any other from the council? Do I have go ahead.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Roll call?
Iris DeCarlo,
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Bagwell,
Yes.
Garza.
Yes. Next item, please.
I need a motion to close out the grant.
I'll move to accept and approve the closeout of the 2020 CDBG CV grant.
I'll second that. Roll call.
Pyrus de Carvalho,
Yes.
Dave
Yes.
Soldner.
Yes.
Bagwell.
Yes.
Garza.
Yes. Ne-
Item 8B, public hearing to consider the adoption of a revised floodplain management ordinance, updated paper and digital flood insurance maps, and an updated flood insurance study for the city of Hutchinson.
I'll move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Pyrus de Carvalho,
Yes.
Dave
Yes.
Soldner.
Yes.
Bagwell.
Yes.
Garza.
Yes.
Alrighty. Good morning, everybody. So now I'm going to take my director hat off and put my floodplain administrator hat on. So this has been a long time coming. This is the update to the flood map and flood study for the city. In particular, really, it's the Cow Creek system, as well as anything that's protected by the city's levee system. So kind of give a little bit of history of where we are at, where we came from, and where we're going. So the current flood maps and study went into effect back in January of 2010. The maps most recently, this update was actually part of the Hutchinson levee system accreditation. So actually back in 2006, the city began the process of accrediting the levee system. And the city got basically a conditional accreditation, and that is what the 2010 maps were for. This update is actually to remove that provisional accreditation and put the final accreditation in for the system. So these maps were created with a technology called LiDAR, which is light detection and ranging. Really what this does is it creates a more accurate map based on ground elevations and computer modeling. It's best way to kind of figure it out or to make an example of it would be it's the difference between kind of going from analog to digital. When you look at like television, with the old style, basically what they used was old topographical maps and kind of follow the topography. What LiDAR actually does is it can pick out where there's a road bed or where there's maybe a dam or something like that, and really create a lot more accurate maps. So the update for this mapping began in the summer of 2017. There was a public open house that was held in April of 2018. Excuse me. So FEMA opened their 3-month appeal period back in July of 2019, and a letter of final determination was issued by FEMA on July 29th of 2020. This LFD actually started the 6-month clock for the city to hold a public hearing, adopt the revised maps and study, and a revised ordinance. And if everything is approved this morning, these maps would go into effect on January 29th of 2021. So kind of going into a little bit of the changes of the flood map, and I apologize, this is a little difficult to see, but you'll see really two major colors, and there's a few areas that are green, which are not as many properties. So the red properties are properties to be added to the floodplain. So over 200 properties were actually added to the floodplain compared to what is in there now. The yellow are properties to remain in the current floodplain, and then the green are properties to be removed. So we went from about 200 properties in the floodplain to just over 400 properties in the floodplain. So federal law does require that properties with a federally backed mortgage, they have to obtain flood insurance. And the city and the state and FEMA do encourage for all property owners to look at getting a flood policy, as your traditional your traditional homeowner's insurance does not cover flood damage. So there are currently 31 flood insurance policies in the city. We expect the number will go up with the number of properties that are going into the floodplain. And currently, staff is working with the state and FEMA to join what we call the community rating system. This is very similar to like the fire insurance ISO rating, where you can do certain things and actually bring that cost of flood insurance down. So we are working through that process to hopefully reduce the cost for our residents.
What was the Was it that big flooding that happened? What caused so many houses to go into the floodplain?
Really, it's the better modeling.
Better modeling?
Mhm.
The elevations.
Um,
Okay.
And then,
'Cause I'm
and,
sure there's gonna be a lot of upset people. Yeah.
there really wasn't.
Oh,
A lot of
really?
these people really
Okay.
kind of expected they were going to go in the
Alright.
floodplain. They've either had flooding issues in the past, or they knew of that their
Mhm.
property could flood. The city is working, though, on actually pulling some of those properties probably eventually out of the floodplain.
Okay.
The engineering department is working with the state right now to do some improvements to Cow Creek,
Mhm.
which will reduce the floodplain, especially south and east of downtown. And that's really where most of the property is. So here's downtown. This is really Cow Creek here. And that's really where you saw quite a bit more properties
Mhm.
that went into the floodplain. So the city is working in that process, but that's going to take a couple of years
Okay, thank you.
to get those improvements done.
So Ryan, assuming these maps are approved, we make the improvements, then there's a revision process, and that takes another year or so,
Mhm.
and then they can come out. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. And Jeff could talk probably a little bit more about that process, but really the intent is, that as those improvements are done, they can model that at the same time and bring those properties out rather quickly once those improvements are done.
Okay.
So also as part of this, we have to revise our flood protection ordinance. So this is based on a model ordinance from the state of Kansas. The ordinance has been reviewed and approved by the city attorney as well as the chief engineer at the Division of Water Resources. What this ordinance will do is it would repeal and replace the current ordinance, which is Chapter 21, Article 10 of the City Code. This ordinance requires floodplain development permits for properties that are within the floodplain for any new construction or substantially improved construction. State law actually requires that all new construction and substantially improved structures have to have what's called 1 foot of freeboard. So that would mean that whatever the base flood elevation is for that property, the structure has to be at least 1 foot above that elevation. So that can be done with fill, it could be done with a lot of different type of things, but typically around here you'll see it done with fill, where you'll actually see the home is set up a little bit higher than the surrounding property. So some of the changes to the model
Ryan,
ordinance.
can you go back to the bullet point on requires floodplain development permit?
Yep.
Need a little explanation as to, has that language been in the previous ordinance?
Mhm.
It has.
It has, yes, and that's
have-
handled by my
Have we
department.
actually had homeowners that have applied for that permit?
We probably get about 3 or 4 a year.
Okay.
We actually have quite a few more now with the CRS program. Part of what had to be done was there had to be an audit of our floodplain. So the state actually came out, drove all the properties that were within the floodplain, and tagged anything that really was built without a permit. And so what you will really see where a lot of people run aground of that is sheds, because our city code doesn't require a building permit if it's under 120 square feet, but the state still does require floodplain development permits. So what ends up happening is somebody goes to Lowe's, they go buy one of those small sheds, put it in the back of their property. We never know about it until the state comes out and does an audit, and they say, oh, hey, by the way, 10 years ago, there was, they look at aerials and things like that to determine where new structures have popped up. So
What is involved in the permit process?
it's pretty straightforward.
Pretty
It's-
straightforward?
It's a $50 process or permit fee. The big thing is you need the elevation of the base flood elevation of the property, which we could get from the state pretty easily. You need the elevation of the lowest floor of whatever structure is being built, and then if it's below the floodplain, below the flood elevation, you can do that, but you have to do different flood proofing techniques and things like that. So I'll get into it here a little bit with the changes to model ordinance, but a big one you'll see is people will put sheds or things like that in the floodplain. We do allow for that, but there are certain things that have to be done for that. So, and they still have to get the floodplain development permit. So one of our engineers in town is very familiar with it, and usually folks will use that engineering company to get the elevations and all that. So there is a cost to that, but really the intent is that we don't really want to see a lot of structures in the floodplain, and so so yeah, there does have to be kind of a little bit of a process there. So folks are allowed to, but they have to either flood-proof it or go through this permitting process. So
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Does the county have the same thing? I mean, we just cover our city limits, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So when they go outside the city limits, then they have to go to the county to get the same process, right?
Yep, actually back in November, I think the county revised their flood ordinance, and it's very similar to this.
Okay.
As I said, it's based on a model ordinance from the state, and cities and communities can modify it a little bit for their local needs, but there's certain things we have to meet under federal law if we want to be in the flood insurance program, and one of these things is requiring a floodplain development permit and things like that. That's actually a requirement under state and federal law if we want to remain in the flood insurance program. So,
In fact, I just added a question yesterday on that. Is 43rd in the city limits? Is it outside the city limits? Depends.
it depends. 43rd's the northern city limits, so.
Right.
Mhm.
Just have to find out where the house is going,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
Don't we handle Willowbrook's floodplain, or just the levee?
I think we just handled the levy. Yeah, the county is the one that actually, I think, processes their floodplain development permits. So, so changes to the model ordinance. So as I mentioned, the state gives us the model ordinance, and then we have some flexibility on things we can do. Upon review of the chief engineer, they gave us several suggestions. These are things that either reflect new FEMA guidance, or there are things that can help get us extra points in the CRS program. So the first one is requiring that mechanical and heating equipment have that 1 foot freeboard. Under the model ordinance, what it actually says is that you can flood-proof it, so put it in basically enclose it in an area that isn't impermeable to water. But what the preferred method is to actually have that heating and mechanical equipment at least that 1 foot freeboard. So we have suggested putting that in. It helps us get a few additional points in that CRS program, which once again could actually lower our residents' flood insurance premiums. The next one is actually a FEMA change, and that's actually that we now would allow for accessory structures of up to 600 square feet could be flood proof. So this would be sheds, garages, things like that that aren't really inhabited. What we say by wet flood proofing, typically what you'll see is it's flood vents, so that allows for the water to go in and go out, which prevents major structural damage to the building, and also make sure that the building doesn't come loose and become an issue in a flood. It is wet flood proof though. That means that pretty much anything that's inside is going to get wet. So that's something we always tell people. But that is something that FEMA does allow, so that's up to the 600 square feet. New construction or substantial improvements to residential structures in the AO zone. So the AO zone is what we call shallow flooding. It's really only 1 to 3 feet of water that you would get in a flood. We would require that to have the 1 foot freeboard. And then general localization of the ordinance. So pulling out where it says county and putting city in and that type of thing. So that's the changes to the model ordinance. And you have a copy of the ordinance to review. And with that, I will pause for any questions you all may have or the public may have.
Just one other question. These properties that are been added to the floodplain, how will these folks be notified as to their inclusion now in the floodplain?
They were actually notified back in 2018.
All right.
They received a letter from the city inviting them to the open house.
Yeah.
And so they are aware that they are within, they've either been removed, added, or they're staying in the floodplain. So anybody that was in that yellow, green, or red got a letter from the city. So folks have been notified, and I do believe that FEMA actually notifies folks as well.
I'm sure there'll still be a few surprises.
There always is.
Yeah.
And usually what happens is they won't realize it until
Yep.
we flag something when they come in for a permit. We say, oh, you need a floodplain development permit. So we are working with our with IT, and then also with Citizen Serve, who's our permitting software, to ensure that those properties have flags, so that when somebody comes in and gets a permit, hopefully everybody knows, either on the building side or on the planning side. So
Okay. Ryan, if any of those new 200 have a federally backed mortgage on their home now, are their banks notified or, okay,
Mhm.
so their
Yep.
bank would let them know that
yes,
they're now
and the bank
required?
will definitely let people know.
Okay,
Yeah, because the banks are on the hook if that flood insurance policy is not obtained. So
Yeah. That's just probably a pretty big blow. That insurance isn't.
it's not
Yeah.
cheap, but there are ways that you can reduce your cost. And one of the things, like I said, the city's trying to do is get in that CRS program, and really,
What is
depending
it?
on the classification we're at, it's about a 5% reduction every class you go up. We've had an initial review. We would probably come in at probably a class 8, maybe in a class 7, so that could be up to a 15% discount on flood insurance. But we have to go through the whole audit process, and the big part of that is closing out a lot of those structures that may have been built 7, 8, 9 years ago without the permits, and having those tough conversations with the property owners of, hey, you need to flood-proof your building or whatever. So
What's the best rating?
a 1.
Okay.
And that gives you a 45% discount.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So very, very difficult. A lot like the fire department, you have to do a lot of different things. And I think in the country there's less than 24 class 1 communities. So we will strive for that, but there's a lot of things that have to be done, not just ordinance wise, but even infrastructure wise and things like that. So there is some expense to the city on that. So
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Is that even on fire time, if their house caught on fire, how much time it takes for the fire engine? I'm talking about more towards the county and the city limits. That counts too, don't it? How the
that
fire-
would be for the fire. That'd be for the ISO rating.
Okay.
That has nothing really to do with the community rating system. But the ISO, it's set up very similar, that there's different classes, and if you
And
meet different criteria, you
when
can
you
get
s-
those points.
When you say that the flood insurance can get lowered based on what, is
Mhm.
that like, where they have to get the insurance through like the state program? I think there's home insurance, through Kansas, what's it called? Is it like that where you?
Yeah,
I can't
so-
remember what insurance that's called, but there's an insurance program for home insurance through the state kind of thing. I don't know if it's exactly through the
Mhm.
state.
So yeah, how the flood insurance program works is that there are certain insurance providers that will provide flood insurance. Generally, you can shop around, obviously, but you're not really going to get much of a difference because those numbers are actually set by FEMA. And the intent of that is that hopefully the flood insurance premiums, that we pay here in Kansas, also go and help other communities around the country, because this all goes into a very large FEMA bank, basically, and that is used to pay out flood insurance claims across the country. So that's why you'll see places like Florida, or when you're in the coast, you may pay several $1,000s a year for flood insurance, and it's based on the risk.
Okay.
Here in Kansas, you're paying probably several hundred to maybe $1,000, depending on where you're at. If your property is actually significantly lower than the base flood elevation, you're going to pay more because you have a higher risk of actually, a higher risk of flooding. So we'll just say, for example, base
But-
flood elevation
okay.
is 1,500
But
feet.
the cost savings for what we do trickles down into the individual companies.
Absolutely, yeah, it
Okay.
does, because basically that becomes an across-the-board
Okay.
discount for all the flood insurance policies in the city.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Do I have a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close?
Second.
Ernest Corolla,
Yes.
Daigle,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Bagwell,
Yes.
Garza.
Yes. Next item, please.
I would move to approve the ordinance repealing and replacing Chapter 21, Article 10 of the Code of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, the adoption of updated paper and digital flood insurance maps, and an updated flood insurance study for the city of Hutchinson, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
By Mistake Corolla?
Yes.
Sable?
Yes?
Solner?
Yes.
Bagwell?
Yes.
Garza?
Yes.
Item 9A, consider zoning ordinance amendment.
Alrighty. So this is a package of our annual zoning ordinance amendments. So the staff looks at the zoning ordinance throughout the year. We get either feedback from developers or the community, the planning commission, to look at different amendments to either clarify the ordinance or to deal with issues that may be of a concern. So this is actually one of the duties that's outlined in the zoning ordinance of the planning commission, is that on an annual basis they are to review the zoning regulations, consider any needed amendments, hold the public hearing, and then make the recommendation to city council. So these are based on the comments received from the commission, the public, and recommendations from my team. So the history of this is that the planning commission held a study session on November 10th. The development review committee reviewed these proposals at their meeting on December 8th. The public hearing was held on December 15th, and it was recommended for approval by the planning commission with a 7-0 vote at that meeting. So there are several proposed text amendments. I'll kind of go through a summary of them, and then we'll get into the individual changes. So the first is a couple of packages of definition amendments. So it's adding a definition for a breezeway. Under building, we're adding clarification to conform with practice that the building inspections department already does, and that allows for connecting separate parts of a building with something like a breezeway, which would then count that whole would now be one whole building. So you wouldn't have to deal with is an accessory structure or not. So it allows for a little bit more flexibility on that. Adding a definition for gunsmithing. Couple of accessory use changes, adding private pools as an allowed accessory use in the C5 zoning district, that's our downtown zoning district, adding electrical vehicle charging stations as an accessory use in our multifamily, residential, commercial, industrial, and public and institutional zones, allowing for unenclosed front porches and decks to extend into the required front or rear setbacks, clarifying that accessory structures and uses require a principal use or structure. And some additional changes. Amending the dates of the fireworks sales in our temporary use section to conform with the fire code and other parts of the city code. And then some minor changes to titles and removing sections from the table of contents. And then finally, adding some additional clarification on where barbed wire is allowed for security purposes in our commercial industrial zoning districts. So I'll kind of get into now the specifics. So under our definitions section, the first one, as I mentioned, would be adding a definition for a breezeway. This would mean a roofed open-sided passageway for the purpose of connecting one portion of a principal building with the other part of a principal building on a single lot. As I mentioned, this already kind of conforms with what we allow for folks to do, but we want to actually add a definition to that. Under building, we'd be adding clarification that parts that are connected by a breezeway would be considered the same building. And then gunsmith, this is something for, especially home occupations, we get a lot of requests for that our ordinance doesn't really speak about. And that would be a person who repairs, modifies, embellishes, refurbishes, or installs parts on finished firearms. Gunsmiths without on-site retail sales may be permitted as a home occupation, provided that all other home occupation regulations are met. So that is the changes to the definition section. I'll pause if anyone has any questions on that. Okay, seeing none. All right, we will move now into our section of permitted obstructions and required yards. So we would add a section under 27.313 that would allow for decks and porches that are not enclosed by screens, walls, glass, or other enclosures. So basically an open air deck or porch that we would allow for that provided the projection is no more than 4 feet into a required front or rear yard. So we do get some times where someone wants to put a deck or a porch on their property, and we, at this point, don't allow for that actually to project into that. But we do think that's something that is reasonable, provided that it might be roofed, but there is no walls or anything like that, and they wouldn't in the future be able to enclose that. So we think that's a reasonable allowance, and something that a lot of other communities actually do as well. So the next section, 27.314, accessory buildings and uses. This is a clarification. We already don't allow for this, but striking the word zoning from that, there is actually a term in our ordinance that is zoning lot. And that could actually mean that properties that are in the same ownership and under the same zoning classification are considered a zoning lot, even though they might be separate parcels. And so we actually wanted to strike that, because the intent of this is that accessory uses and structures really need to be tied to a principal use or a structure. The last thing we want is for somebody to split a lot off or sell a portion of a lot and leave kind of what we call an orphan accessory use or an accessory structure. That can cause issues with ownership, property maintenance, those type of things. So it's a standard that almost every zoning ordinance requires, that you can't have an accessory use or an accessory structure without that principal structure or use. And we just wanted to clarify that by striking that word zoning out of there. So
Ryan, what happens to properties right now that only have that accessory and no primary structure? Because I know I've received phone calls on a few, or at least one. How do we deal with that?
Usually we allow for those to continue. We consider them like a non-conforming structure, but at that point they can't really do any additions or anything like that. They can do maintenance to upkeep it, but they can't add on to it. And if they are coming in to do, let's say, a lot split or a lot combination, and we notice it, we'll make sure that that is now folded back in to, we try when we can to get it back with a principal use or structure. If we can't, we consider it non-conforming, and then it falls under those restrictions.
Okay, thank you.
How about garages on the back? You know, they're separate buildings, right?
That's considered an accessory structure, and we don't allow for that. It has to be on the same property.
Has to be on the same property.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm. There we go. All right, so now under our accessory use table, we have two changes to it. First one is allowing for private swimming pools to be a permitted accessory use in our C5 zoning district. Staff believes that's kind of was just originally an oversight. That would allow for some of the uses that we are envisioning potentially in our downtown: hotels, apartments, things like that. How the ordinance is actually written now, a hotel or an apartment building that, you know, had a pool as a amenity, that would not actually be an allowed accessory use. And so we wanted to clarify that. So we're allowing it in the C5, still has to meet all the setback requirements and everything for that zoning district. So we think that's a pretty easy cleanup there. So next up is public use electric vehicle charging stations. So this is one that obviously, as electric vehicles become more popular, we have had some requests from property owners to install these charging stations for their customers or for the general public to use. So we have recommended that that is added as a permitted use with design requirements. In our R4, R5, R6, those are all zoning districts that allow for multifamily properties, as well as all of our commercial, all of our industrial, and our public and institutional zoning districts. And I will actually get into now what those design requirements that we are proposing would be. So there are several here, but actually no, there's not, there's only a few. So we would allow for those electric vehicle charging stations to be permitted in our R4, R5, and R6 zoning districts only as an accessory use to multi-unit living, so our multifamily properties. And then facilities would have to obtain approval from the Development Review Committee, including electric utility availability, because that's a big thing, that these charging stations, you all may not realize it, but they are humongous power draws. Especially if you're looking at like a Tesla station or something like that, the supercharger stations, oftentimes you'll have to have its own electric substation just to power those. So that's something we certainly want to make sure that the electric utilities are involved in that conversation. And they sit on our development review committee, so we would anticipate that they would provide any feedback if their system could not handle it in that location. So we tried to ensure that we didn't put too many design standards, because it's something that we want to encourage business owners to and property owners to look at doing. But there were a few things we want to ensure that that these weren't going to cause unintended consequences. There we go. Okay. So the next one is our barbed wire. Currently, we have very limited standards on. All it says is that barbed wire may be permitted for security requirements. That's all it says. And so we wanted to ensure that we allow for it, but only really in places where it's appropriate. So we have now said that barbed or razor wire may be permitted for security requirements with the following design standards. So we permit that in our C3, our C4, all of our industrial, and our public and institutional zoning districts. So we don't think that it's something that should really be permitted in our C1 or C2. That's going to be more office or neighborhood oriented commercial. And certainly we don't think it's something that we would want to see in our residential zoning districts. So really it's only our heavy commercial, our industrial, and then city or government owned property. So the other thing is installed at a minimum of 72 inches above ground level. That is so that unless you're not, best way to put it is we want to ensure that there's no inadvertent interaction with the razor wire, unless you're trying to climb over the fence, and then it's going to do what it's supposed to do. But we don't want just people interacting with it unless they're there for nefarious purposes. So and that's a requirement that we got straight from Wichita. That's what they have in their ordinance for barbed or razor wire. That it's not visible from the public right of way in our gateway corridor overlay district. So that would be really the main roads that are coming into the city. It's not something that we have it already in some properties, but it's not something we want to necessarily continue. Planning Commission and staff feel that that's not really a great welcome into our city, seeing properties that have razor wire right there along the roads. Those properties could still have it, but it would need to be behind the building or things like that. Not visible from public right of way on streets that are classified as state highway or arterial streets. So once again, that's really going to be our main roads. Again, it's not something that really we want to have super visible to the public. The visibility limitations in the subsections 3 and 4 would not apply to property in the AI zoning district. That's our airport. The airport's right along the gateway corridor. Due to federal regulations, security requirements, and all that, they have to have barbed wire at the top of their fence, and that's not something we want to prohibit. And then finally, nothing in these standards would prohibit the allowance of barbed wire in our TA, which is our transitional agricultural zone, for the purpose of securing domestic farm animals. So once again, on our ag properties, we don't want to limit property owners who need it for the purpose of securing their livestock or things like that. So so that's kind of a lot to unpack, so I'll pause there for any questions that y'all may have.
And those who might already have it visible in a gateway or arterial, it's grandfathered, they don't have to change it?
Yes, they would be allowed to keep it, but if they wanted to add any additional, they wouldn't be able to do that. But if it's there, we would allow for it to continue.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking about the water tower, because
And maintenance, if they needed to replace?
Maintenance is still allowed. Yep, they just
Okay.
can't add additional.
But isn't there if you're replacing more than 60%, it's considered not a replacement? How would we do that if you needed to replace the whole top part?
I think how we've looked at that in the past is that if they're taking the whole fence down, not just replacing the barbed wire, but if they're taking the whole fence down, that could trigger that. But we have had
I'm
times where.
just trying to think of
Understandable,
ahead.
yep,
If it's
and
more than
that's-
60%, like we need to,
Yep.
like our whole fence at the water towers
Mhm.
just totally,
Yep.
and they want
And-
to
and-
put a new
and-
one in. Well, it's over the
Mhm.
60%, now you can't put the barbed wire there. I'm just trying to.
Yep.
make
And actually,
sure
thank
that
you for
we-
mentioning the water tower. I think that's something where I would make a suggestion of a quick change on the fly, and that would be that we would add PI to that section 4 there. So that would include all the public institutional. So that would be the water
Yeah.
tower, that would be the county maintenance yard, township maintenance yards, anything that is that PI that would not then fall into those visibility limitations.
Yeah.
So I was only thinking of the airport, but yes, thank you. The water
Yeah.
tower is on an
Mhm.
arterial and in a gateway, and at some
Mhm.
point we will need to replace that. So I would recommend that.
Well, it's a
We add that as
safety,
a change.
yeah, I mean, it's a safety security issue, so you need
Mhm.
to have it. So.
So, all right. Anyone else have any other questions about the barbed wire? If not, I will move forward here.
And what's the, that way, I need to write that down. What's the amendment to it you're gonna do for Nancy?
That would be that under subsection 4 there, I'm sorry, subsection 5 there, where it says the visibility limitations, we would say shall not apply to property in the AI or the PI zoning
Yeah.
districts.
AKAI or PI. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So there are a couple of quick fixes here. Under our temporary use permits, our ordinance allows for fireworks sales between June 27th and July 4th. Other city codes say June 30th to July 4th. So we just want to clear that up and maintain the same consistency. So we would recommend that that gets amended from June 27th to June 30th. So that would line up with the fire code and the other requirements in the city code. And then just a couple of quick changes referencing where things had changed and just didn't get changed in titles or things like that. So changing title of section 27702 from table of off-street parking and loading requirements just to table of off-street parking requirements. The loading requirements has been removed from that section, and the title was never changed. And then we no longer have a section 27704, which is off-street parking in our CR district, our commercial residential, and so we would recommend that that just gets removed from the table of contents. And that is all that I have on that, so I will pause for any questions.
No questions? Do I have a motion?
I'll move to accept and approve the recommendations of the Planning Commission to approve the ordinance amending Chapter 27 zoning regulations of the city of the, Code of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, with the addition of PI for fencing in subsection 4 of Chapter 27, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second?
Iris De Carvalho,
Yes.
Dayline.
Yes.
Solomon.
Yes.
Bagwell.
Yes.
Garza.
Yes.
Item 10A, consider 2020 annual report of the Hutchinson Land Bank.
All right. So before you this morning is the required annual report for the 2020, the 2020 annual report for the land bank. So I'll kind of go through just some summaries, what the accomplishments were of the year, and then a budget request that the land bank is requesting. So first, we'll kind of go through real quick what the land bank's goals are. It's to strengthen and improve the city's neighborhoods, promote the construction of infill housing and development, reduce and eliminate blight, operate efficiently and effectively, and then advance the economic and social interest of the city and its residents. So the land bank was, I think most people know, but it was established back in 2014. And really what they do is the land bank is a separate entity from the city. It is its own actual organization, but the people who are on it are still named by the city council, and city staff still is the ones who are the liaisons for that. But their intent is to take properties that may have typically go to the tax sale, and the land bank will purchase those, hold on to them, and then offer them for sale with the with the hope of that that those properties can then be placed back on the tax roll as properties that actually benefit the community. So it was a weird year. We didn't have really any acquisitions. Thanks to COVID, there wasn't really much at the tax sale. But we did have some sales and some other action. So I'll kind of go through these and then show some pictures of the property. So back in June, the land bank entered into a first right of refusal with New Beginnings for 3 properties on West 6th Street, 214, 216, and 218. What was unique about this was kind of the first time that the land bank looked at doing these first right of refusals, and really the cost of entering into that agreement is that New Beginnings actually agreed to maintain that property. So they mow it, they keep it all upkeep, and actually does save the city and the land bank money, because we pay about $50 to $60 each property that needs to be mowed. And during the summer, those get mowed twice a month. So it was a significant savings, and something that the land bank is going to be looking to do more in the future with property owners who may show interest in a property, but may not be ready yet to purchase that property. So in July, the land bank turned down an offer from a neighbor to buy 539 East Avenue A for a side yard addition. That's one we get a lot of requests for people to do. Hey, I've got a land bank property next door to me. I want to buy it. Not put anything on it. I just want to make my yard bigger. That's not usually the goal of the land bank. The land bank is really hoping to get new development, infill development, things like that. So the land bank will oftentimes turn down those offers. And in this case, the property at 540 Watt East A was donated to the land bank last year. And so the hope is that those 2 properties will be bought together to create a larger lot for someone to do infill development on. So the land bank turned down that offer from the neighbor. In October, the land bank approved a preliminary offer for a property on East Harvey Street, pending an agreement on project design and timeline. That is one of the things the land bank also does, is that when someone comes in and requests to purchase a property, we ask for a bare minimum at least. What are you going to do with the property? What type of building are you going to put on the property, or things like that, so that we know that it's going to be something that's going to be beneficial to the neighborhood. So, and as the city owns, or the land bank, owns the property, they have some rights to dictate the terms of any purchase agreement. And then the land bank turned down a request to donate some property on West 5th. We do get sometimes where property owners will say, hey, I don't want to deal with this property anymore. I want to donate it to the city. This was a property that was actually a commercially zoned property. And the land bank really had no interest in getting into commercial development at this time. So they turned down that request. And then, as I mentioned, the land bank did not actually acquire any properties at the tax sale, but we fully intend to hopefully have a full slate of properties next year to choose from. So here's just some pictures. So this is the property at 214, 216, and 218 West 6th that New Beginnings has a right of first refusal on. It's a pretty large property, and their intent would be that they would do, they're looking at maybe doing a small economy home community or something like that there. So they entered in a right of first refusal. Here's the 2 properties at 539 and 541 East Avenue A. As you can see, when you have those 2 properties together, you actually got a pretty decent piece of property there that you can build on. So that is why the land bank did not want to get rid of the property there to the left at 539. So, or just allow it to go just for someone to expand their yard.
So Ryan, if somebody's interested in those properties, they would reach out to the land bank.
Yep.
And they would have to provide a plan.
Yeah, we have an application process. They provide a plan. They provide what they want to purchase the property for. The land bank will then take that under consideration. We'll debate, okay, is this something we'll want to do, or do we want to counter offer? So very similar to what you see in any other type of real estate transaction. So the land bank is made up of, we have a realtor on it, we've got a surveyor, someone from a title company. We used to have an attorney on it. So it's people who are very, very familiar with the intricacies of real estate transactions. And then this is the property on East Harvey Street. And this actually illustrates a very problem we're seeing more of, and you'll see the reasoning why we've now included it in the budget. We have a lot of these properties that have old trees on them, and there's some real expense to actually removing those trees.
Yeah.
And so that's something that usually becomes a negotiation point with whoever wants to buy it. What responsibility does the land bank have to remove the tree versus, what responsibility should be shared with the future property owner? So this one on East Harvey Street is taking a little longer because the land bank has been negotiating with a potential person on who's going to be responsible for removing a dead tree on that property.
Ryan, okay, get me straight on this. The land bank here, these are people that are behind on their taxes, am I right, or not?
Typically,
No.
that's the main source that the land bank obtains their properties. They obtain them from the tax sale.
So does the city or does land bank pay the taxes, and then,
So-
how does it work?
So what typically happens is when a property is bought at the tax sale,
Mm-hmm,
those taxes are wiped.
okay,
And then typically what would happen is anything like old mowing fees or things like that, liens like that are on the property. Usually whoever buys it, the land bank would contact the finance department, and then the city can look at, do we wipe those liens off the property as well. For the land bank, we always do. We basically get it back to zero. So the taxes are paid and all that. And then while the land bank holds the property, that property is tax exempt from the county. So the city is not paying the land bank is not paying property taxes or anything like that while it's being held.
but is this an actual bank, or does the city, comes under the city funds to pay for the taxes?
So as I said, the taxes are wiped clean by the county at
Okay.
the tax sale.
Mhm.
It's a land bank in terms of the entity is actually holding these properties, and that's the bank,
Mhm.
and then releases them as people want to purchase them. So that's what we mean by land bank. So it's not actual money. What the land bank is doing is transactioning land. So.
Is there a lot of properties in town that you guys don't, that the land bank doesn't buy up or pay taxes on?
Yes, so the land bank, and this was kind of through the housing plan, typically focuses on the southern part of the city. And that idea is, once again, that we're trying to stop more of that urban blight and stuff like that that's happening in the southern part of the city. And that's also an area that the city is really trying to encourage more infill development. So where you kind of have the holes in the smile, where you'll see a house, blank property, a house. We want to infill that. It's a better use of the city's resources in terms of utilities and things like that.
How successful has it been?
It's been quite successful. I didn't include that, but in the actual annual report, you'll see, I think the land bank has sold about 10 properties, and I think
Did
they hold about 10 properties currently. So
And of the ones that have been sold, primary structures have gone up in them?
some of them they have, others they have been to expand a yard. But yeah, we have a few that, like I said, now New Beginnings is becoming a lot more active. And actually, when I get into the kind of the 2021-2022 strategic plan, you will see that one of the things the land bank wants to do is be a lot more aggressive in marketing those properties, and be a lot more aggressive on kind of providing design, I won't say requirements, but design ideas and things like that. Of that, so when people are interested in buying a property, they can kind of see, okay, what could I actually do on this property? So, so like I said, really the point is we want to get those properties from losing tax money to at least getting back onto the tax rolls. And that can be done by expanding a yard, but it's a lot more efficient if you can actually get some type of development on that property. So
Okay,
it's kind of back and forth on that.
all right.
Real quick, I got one problem in my head that I see.
Mhm.
How far do they let the taxes go before the land bank gets involved? I don't know. Reason I'm saying that is because I can see people telling me the city's taking my property from me.
Mhm.
How far do they let it go before the land bank gets interested in it?
So I believe it's 3 years that you have to be in arrears before you're even eligible to for that property to go to the tax sale, and then it's a tax sale. So when the land bank goes to the tax sale, we have to compete with anybody else who wants to purchase that property. So the city's not actually taking anybody's property. It's really the county that is coming in because someone is in arrears on their taxes, a significant amount, more than just a year. Like I said, it has to be at least 3 years, and oftentimes the county lets it go
Yeah.
even longer than
4 or
that.
5 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Longer.
I think, yeah, the majority I usually see is 5 or 6 years
Yeah.
on the tax
Mhm.
sales.
And the county tries everything to get people to pay.
Mm-hmm.
Sends them letters, sends them notices, and all that type of stuff. But at
So
some
it's gonna
point,
get sold anyways, but then the land bank takes it up, and
Mhm.
that way it doesn't end up just a blank lot that
Yep.
nobody's maintaining or.
because that's actually what happens a lot. You'll see
Mhm.
these properties that go through the tax sale 2 or 3 times because someone's like, "Oh, I can go buy this piece of property for $100." And then they just sit on it because they realize that, oh, it's a lot more difficult to develop a piece of property than I had maybe anticipated. And so then that property ends up going back to the tax sale. So at least with the land bank, we're able to hold on to it. We're able to vet people who potentially want to come through and ensure that they actually understand and have the budget and understand everything that goes into
Yeah,
actually
'cause
developing
it takes
a
a lot
property.
to build a new primary structure.
It does. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so looking at the strategic plan, so these are just highlights, but I can go through the actual strategies as well. But the strategies are looking to increase our online presence through social media and partnerships with outside organizations. So that is, once again, really want to talk about more advertising of what the land bank has in its inventory. Coordinating with city and county departments to improve land bank effectiveness. That could be things, one of the strategies that we are looking at is working with the building official and the building inspections department to kind of create a demolition plan. And then with that, we can actually maybe approach properties that are going to be demolished and say, hey, are you interested in donating that property to the land bank? So there's some things we can do with that. With the county, looking at, can the land bank kind of get a first right of refusal on certain properties that the land bank might be interested in? And then, can the land bank be changed to allow for it to obtain properties that already have structures on it? So that is one thing that some communities have been very successful in. I know Pittsburgh, over in the eastern part of the state, has been very successful with that. But our land bank is not set up for that. We'd actually have to change how it operates, but it's something that the land bank's interested in. And then, as I mentioned, developing criteria for lot acquisition to increase the impact of the land bank. So that would be, as I mentioned, putting in, design recommendations.
And, sorry, and when you mean design recommendations, can you further elaborate? Is that like maybe possible primary structures that would fit in those particular lots? Maybe already going through the, cost blueprints? Is
Yes.
that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that the land bank has shown some interest in doing, is maybe partnering with the School of Architecture at KU to have maybe some of their studio students look at the average size we have and, hey, what are some very rudimentary type plans that somebody can look at? Because someone might look at a piece of property like, I don't know what I can do with a 40-foot wide lot. Well, hey, here's what you can do. You could still put this size of a house on it and do all of that. So really helping people kind of think more outside the box instead of their initial reaction, which is, I just want to buy this property that's next door to me to have a bigger yard.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean, don't we kind of already have that with the experience with KU several years ago? Didn't they sort of do some designs for possible houses that could fit?
That they ran
On our
100
small-
grand.
Yeah, on our
Yeah,
small lots.
I think that had started and it never actually finished because
Yeah.
the funding was not there, but that's something that they certainly are, the land bank is very interested in doing, and we think
Okay.
it could help, like I said, help kind of people think outside the box. So that's something that we'd like to see if, okay, can we, like I said, maybe work with a studio class at KU or somebody like that where we can, the students can get some good experience, and we're not talking actual architectural stamp plans, we're talking
Right.
just a
Right.
design book,
Yeah,
or something like that, something that just gives
Okay.
people some inspiration.
kind of like order your houses from Sears.
Yeah, exactly, yes. So, and then finally, I don't know why, there we go. The 2021 budget, so, and I apologize, that's a lot smaller than I expected, but the starting balance for the year 2021 is just over $5,900. The land bank is requesting $10,000 from city council to continue to seed the land bank. It's something that is a fairly regular thing. The land bank was seeded with, I believe, $25,000 in 2014, and then about every 2 to 3 years, the city council provides some additional funding to the land bank for them to continue. Here's a list of their expenses, as they are an independent body, not of the city. They have to obtain directors and operators insurance as well as property liability insurance, so that's a fairly significant amount of about $12.50 a year. We have legal and other fees, recording, things like that. Title searches, things that have to be publicized. We have to publicize when a property is sold. And then also, this annual report has to be publicized in the newspaper as well. So there is a cost for that. The main thing, really, $7,000 of the budget is property maintenance. It's mowing, it's tree service. It's pretty expensive to maintain these properties, even with us going out for competitive bids. But it is something that we still do have to do to maintain these properties. And the hope is that we can reduce that cost a little bit with, as I mentioned, some more interesting things like first right of refusal and things like that, which would allow for potential people who want to purchase the property to take over the maintenance of the property. The audit, that's through part of the city. Because we're still in the times of COVID, we're not anticipating any travel or trading for our trustees. We are hoping to be able to purchase some property at the the tax sale in October. We're budgeting $2,500 for that. And then advertisement, just in general, as we mentioned, advertising what's in the, what the land bank holds and things like that. So all in all, at the end of the year, if everything goes through, the land bank would have about $3,200 left. And with that, I will pause for any questions you all may have.
Ryan, is there a certain number of properties they're aiming for to have at any one given time? Especially with all the maintenance required, it seems like we need to.
Yeah, the land bank tries to really only maintain about 10 to 15 properties. Any more than that, it becomes a little bit challenging and becomes expensive to maintain all those properties. So right now, I think we've got about 10 in our inventory. So we'd be looking at probably 3 to 5 properties that the land bank would be interested in potentially purchasing at the tax sale.
And when do you think New Beginnings might be interested in acquiring those other 3 lots?
They're talking about maybe as soon as this summer, actually
Okay.
purchasing that property. So,
Okay,
so we're just working through that process. I think they're working through their design process at this time, but it is still moving forward. Actually, we did a pre-submittal analysis on it in the planning department, kind of looking at a concept plan. So they're very interested in developing that property. So we hope that will come off the rolls and will actually start to be a service to the community again.
Oh, great.
Okay.
So we need a motion on this, right?
I've lost my track of where we are here.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I will move to accept the recommendation of the Land Bank Board of Trustees to accept the 2020 annual report.
Second.
Tyra Sticklerola,
Yes.
Dave White,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Bagwell,
Yes.
Garza.
Yes.
Jeff or Paul, do we need a motion for the $10,000 request from City Council? Or is that wrapped in the report?
I think that would be a matter of the budget already standing. Yeah.
Okay, I figured as much, but I wasn't sure if that had to be a separate item. Okay. All right.
Item 10B, consider final plat of Grace Arbor Edition.
All right. Last thing of me. You're all getting tired of me, I'm
Say,
sure.
this really is the Ryan show.
It really is. My voice is being given out too after talking for an hour, so here we go. We'll go through this one pretty quickly. This is a pretty straightforward plat. So before you is a replat of lot 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 of Block 3, Hutchinson Investment Company, 9th edition, and lots 1 and 2, Block 10 of D.B. Miller's edition, to the city of Hutchinson, Kansas. So this is 3 different property owners. Property owner that lives at 207 East 11th, 215 East 11th, and 217 East 11th. And the surveyor is Alpha Land Surveying. So I will definitely zoom in a little bit closer. It's hard to actually see this, but this is the preliminary plat. So really what they ended up doing was these, let's see if I can actually use my pointer here. Ah, perfect, okay. So the properties in question, you actually see that, you see these 2 properties that are back here at the rear. That's initially what, that's how the property is located. What they're actually doing is combining these lots and creating 3 separate lots that actually go through here. So the property as it exists now is you've got these smaller lots here to the front bordering 11th, and then back here in the alley you've got 2 separate lots. So the intent is that this would be 1 lot, this would be 1 lot, and this would be 1 lot.
How on earth did that ever get platted that way to begin with?
It is
Yeah.
an old
Yeah.
plat. And you actually also see that the lot line does this. I am not sure what the history of that is, but we have a few of those in town, and it's property owners that are trying to clean it up. So you'll see here now, zoom in here. So now you will see, this is what the new lot configurations would look like. So you've got lot 1, lot 2, and lot 3. You can see over here, you've got lots 13, 14, and 15. Now the interesting thing here is that you've got a side street here. So this is its own lot that actually faces this side street. And over here on this side, it's lots 4, 5, and 6. And there's a side street here, and it faces this way. So this is really the only place where you've got this strange little thing. So this is as I said, it will actually combine these lots now into 3 separate lots. Actually, the only reason that this is even before you is because there's an overhead utility line back here, and there was no easement in place. So an easement had to be added, and because it's an easement, that's why it actually has to be approved through, it can't go through consent agenda, and that's why I had to go through planning commission as well. So as I mentioned, it's a pretty straightforward plat. It was reviewed and approved by the planning commission, and that is what staff is recommending here. So with that, I will pause for any questions you all may have.
Okay.
I would move to approve the recommendation of the planning commission to approve the final plat for the Grace Arbor addition.
Second.
Iris Cavalli,
Yes.
Dave Line,
Yes?
Soldner,
Yes.
Bagwell,
Yes.
Garza.
Yes.
Item 10C, consider supplemental engineering agreement for Washington Street Bicycle Boulevard.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Ryan did have a lot to say today, so I'm hoping this doesn't go that way.
Made it, Ryan.
But anyway, as you know, the city received a grant from the Kansas Department of Transportation to develop a bicycle boulevard, or at least one phase of it, from 17th to 27th Avenue. The grant is for 80% of the eligible construction costs. with the city requiring to pay 20% of the eligible construction costs and the cost of the design of the project also. This is standard for these types of grants. Oh, and I guess I didn't say Jeff Peterson, Director of Engineering, to start out with too. So I kind of lose track of that as I go through these things. The engineering department is tying up some of the last loose ends for this project to get it bid and by KDOT. And so some of the main bullet points or the items that caused this to need an additional design services were some of the following. Late last year, the city televised the storm sewer from 18th to 19th, and as they got the results back, there's a portion of the existing storm sewer box that's roughly 2 by 3 that is starting to fail. So this portion is Brick Street, and we're going to run some heavy equipment on it. I was worried that it may collapse during construction, so it's better to take care of it now than to do all the work and then have to repair it later. So at least we did check on the existing storm sewer, so we can kind of put that into place and then get it replaced with this project. So I did talk to KDOT, and it does delay the bid opening a little bit, and then I talked to WSP USA also on the design, and they're willing to take that on as we go forward, of course, for a cost. In addition, we did add some curb and gutter repairs on that same block, and a few other localized places between 17th and 27th Avenue that wasn't originally included in the scope of this project. And then there were some ADA ramps that were included in the original project, but as we were going through this process, KDOT added a number of other additional ADA ramps to be upgraded. There are some ramps in place, but there's some that are still not conforming that would bring these up to conformance with how the ADA does or requires for the ramps at this place too, for this corridor. So that kind of makes it accessible to all people a little better too, through the corridor where the bicycle boulevard is. So the proposed supplement from WSP USA is for a fixed cost of $1,890.01 and an hourly not to exceed cost of $15,750.09 for potentially a maximum cost of $17,640.10. The engineering department operating budget, which includes additional engineering fees, will pay for the cost of this supplement. So I do recommend that the City Council approve the supplemental engineering agreement from WSP USA for a not to exceed cost of $17,640.10. So do you guys have any questions or
So
comments?
is that just to go in and revise?
It's to
the
upgrade and
previous-
add those things.
Okay.
This is a scope change from the original design agreement. So there is some costs associated with that, surveying and different types of things that are included in it. So
Wasn't the construction cost included in our CIP?
yes,
And so when is this going to be constructed? What's the timeline now?
the timeline now, we just got a notification from KDOT that it would actually be bid in September. It was originally going to try to be bid in March, but when I noticed the problems with the storm sewer, I had to talk to them and say, is it okay if we extend it one more time to get it going? And they agreed with that, so.
Isn't we've been talking about this for
Oh,
like
yeah.
6 or 8
We have
years.
been. And this is kind of the one.
Refresh our memory a little bit on the design side at 17th and Washington Street. There were some discussions about various structural changes to that intersection. So
There
what does
is.
the current design call for?
The current design calls for on 17th Avenue, there'll be a pedestrian island at 17th. So this would eliminate
Left-hand turns,
right-hand turns off of
Left-hand.
Washington Street,
yeah.
both
yeah.
north and south for that. So there's a refuge island where they could go halfway across if there's a lot of traffic and then go the rest of the way across. I know this was discussed with the council. Not
Yeah.
everybody was on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
council at that time, some time ago, and that's kind of what was approved at the time. so.
Yeah, you won't be able to turn left off 17th onto Washington, right?
Correct, off of Washington. And
Yeah.
they did do some traffic analysis. There is some traffic that turns right, but it's pretty low volume for that location, so.
Turns left.
What? There's left-hand turns, but there's not right-hand turns. But they did, no, there's not left turns.
There's not
sorry.
left-hand turns.
I'm left-handed to start out with, so
If I'm going west on
I'm-
17th, I can't turn left onto Washington
Correct.
anymore.
So
Yeah. 'Cause I
I'm
was
really
thinking I
muddling
had
this
to,
one.
gonna have to revise my traffic patterns.
So yes,
Yeah, if I'm going west on 17th from Maine, I'm not gonna be able to turn left, in other words, to go south on
Correct.
Washington. And I
Correct.
usually do
And
that to
what's
go down
causing
to the
that?
alley.
there'll be an
So I'll have
island.
to change how I go.
Island?
There will be.
There will be,
an
there is
island
not
there. Yeah.
a small island that'll
Yeah,
eliminate those turns. there.
unless I wanna drive over the island, I'm gonna have to.
And what's the point to that?
It's to allow a refuge island for those pedestrians and/or bicycles to be able to cross halfway, stay there, and then cross the rest of the way if the traffic is higher at that point, at that location. That was a recommendation by the consultant at the time, and
So-
that was presented to the council at the time too, so.
Because they can't get across the road fast enough?
Sometimes, correct, at different times of the day.
It's such a busy intersection.
It's one of those things you'll get used to.
It's it's
Yeah.
kind of a
Still not
traffic
completely
calming
sold on that. but-
location.
Traffic calming?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Since we weren't here and when you guys developed, is this the part of this bike trail, is this adding an extra bike lane in the street?
Actually, no,
yeah.
it's still, the lanes will be the same. It'll just be marked for bicycles, so they share the road. It's not a offset island or an offset
Yeah.
lane by itself. It's just so that bicycles and autos can use the same.
And this is gonna cover the cost of all those crazy brick, it's not gonna be brick anymore?
Correct, it does. There's going to be asphalt
some-
placed from 17th to 19th.
Yeah, 'cause
Again,
the
and
road's pretty
18th to
bad,
19th is
actually.
really bad.
It's
Yeah.
really bad.
You are correct, Sarah.
Yeah.
So yes, it does improve that 2-block section, mainly the 1-block section where
Mhm.
it's.
Or you have to like kinda go in like this.
Yeah.
and-
Correct.
Yeah.
Is that where you have to get the sewer line? Is that where
Correct.
that sewer is?
'Cause
Because I
that-
know that there's a
Because that's the
manhole
raised,
there.
that's the raised
and it's
portion as
really-
you drive,
I don't.
Yeah.
drive that. That's where
It's a- it's
the
a
storm,
sketch.
existing
Okay.
storm sewer is just right below
I
the
drive
surface
it.
there. so-
Yeah, 'cause that area is really
Correct, you're right,
something
Sarah.
else. Okay.
It's not good.
Hey, Jeff.
I'm all for it, except for I'm just confused about the island.
And I can get you some information on that if you want.
Okay.
So,
I think I saw last week an active transportation survey from the state. You
Mhm.
seen that, or was that from maybe the Kansas
I
Recreation
don't
Commission?
know. I don't know if I've seen
Well,
that.
I'm curious if you know if there's additional funding coming down the pike for,
I don't know
active-
right at the moment. Some of that stuff, some of the funding will, again, change with the administrations and those types of things and what's obligated going forward. I think they just have a continuing resolution on funding right now, so
I
they don't
see.
have a formal
yeah.
budget for everything at this point, so.
Okay.
So good,
So-
good
So you're
question.
hoping for it to get done in November and December, so the end of 2021?
Well, I would hope so. There is some timing issues that probably going forward, as this is being administered by KDOT for timing of contracts and those types of things, but that would be the hope. So, or at least the majority of the work would be done maybe this fall, and then the last mill and overlay portion would be done in the spring after that. I don't know for sure
Okay.
yet, so we don't necessarily have control over that
It's getting
portion.
pushed back again, but
Yeah,
we're adding.
unfortunately, and I didn't
yeah.
want to push back, honestly, I'd like to get a bid to, this is one of our last outstanding KDOT projects that have been kind of hanging out there for a long time. We've been kind of picking them off one by one, and this is one that just keeps hanging around lately, so.
Okay.
So this bicycle boulevard, it starts at 17th and it's gonna add on to our bicycle?
It goes from to 17th to 27th,
27th.
correct,
With the goal of going all the way downtown, but we're not there yet,
correct.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
My
Good
big,
questions.
my biggest concern is like everybody would know is that, are we looking at going anyway down south to have the basketball boulevard that way, so? or-
It, the 2014 bicycle pedestrian master plan does have it going down, all the way down to Cary Park at some point through various routes. So that potentially is extended all the way down there, Steve, at some
Yeah.
point, so.
All the way down to Washington.
Well, as far as we can down Washington,
Yeah.
there's a block or two there we have to
Mhm.
probably change, but
So we do have that on the board somewhere.
yes,
Yeah.
it's in the overall bicycle and pedestrian master plan that was developed in 2014, so.
You just have to fund it.
Yeah, it's all dump money there.
I know, it is. You're correct.
Motion to approve the supplemental agreement number 1 with WSP USA Inc. for Washington Street Bicycle Boulevard and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Conrad-State Carvalho?
Yes.
Dayline?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Bagwell?
Yes,
Garza.
Yes.
Thank you.
thank you.
Item 11, report of city officials.
Okay, I got one little question here. I know it's a question that, when they say authorize mayor to sign, that's me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have all of these right here to sign.
Okay.
You will get to practice writing your name, Steve.
Go ahead and put it on there.
Yeah. Okay, well, Ms. Holder, you have anything?
Nothing.
Dave?
No, I don't have anything.
I have 2 items. I
Okay.
do want to congratulate you, Steve, and you, Sarah, as well for your new leadership roles, and look forward to your leadership this next year. And thank you to the whole council for allowing me the opportunity and entrusting in me last year to serve as mayor. It was a very interesting year, and glad I survived that. The second item I had was on the courthouse renovation. I was wondering if we had any update on that, and who is managing that project now. And it seems like we just haven't heard anything about it for months and months, and I was under the impression things should have been done by now, but maybe I had the timeline off.
Do you mean the LEC?
Yes,
Yeah.
I still call it the courthouse. I don't know why, it's connected.
That project is moving along smoothly. It was supposed to actually be done, the original timeline, you're right, was sometime late December, January. Now it's looking like the project won't be done until end of March. And so if you haven't been over to the LEC for a while, the upstairs is fully renovated, and we're living in the upstairs portion of the building now, and they're currently in renovation for the downstairs and the dispatch communication center.
Okay, so we should be able to see completion of that this spring.
Yes, correct.
Fantastic.
We're still working on as Councilmember Dave Line had indicated originally when the project started, doing some things to the facade, and we were waiting to see the money that we had left in our contingency to be able to do that. So we have a plan in place for that. We're working through that with the architect and the contractor now. So that should be the final phase of that development. They're thinking that they can still complete that within their time frame, end of March.
And are you finding that the forces, do they feel good about the usability of it, the different design? I mean, are they already experiencing those benefits, or?
We are. One of the things that, there's two things that I really wanted to accomplish. One was being able to open the facility up to the public, so the general public can walk in, they can walk up to the counter, and they can see a person there and get help. Because of COVID restrictions and stuff, we haven't actually opened that portion up yet, but and right now the lobby is closed down because they're putting tiles and things in there. But that flow seems like it's going to work really well. The other problem that we had with the building, significant problem we had with the building, was that if we were bringing people in to interview them or sit down and just talk with an officer, we had to bring those individuals back behind the secure portion of the facility, back in the command post where our admin offices were, and that's just not feasible. And so we were able to put interview rooms and our teleserve officer up so that it's accessible to the public there and not behind the secure area of the facility. We are using those interview rooms in that portion of the facility now if we do have to bring somebody in, so that appears to be going really well. So Upstairs is the administrative offices and a conference room and investigations for the most part. And it appears that our design is very well organized there. The downstairs is really the nuts and bolts and meat and potatoes kind of operations, because patrol will be down there, their break rooms, dispatch will be down there, our crisis response team will deploy out of there, and so that's really going to be the operational side of things. So it's too early maybe to answer that question, but we designed it this
Yeah.
way in anticipation it'll work. So.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the update. And that's all I had.
Ms. Bagwell.
Just wanted to, I could say thank you for electing me to a leadership role as vice mayor. And, we are starting a new year, and I know that we have some strategic planning ahead, and I just look forward to that, and just God bless everyone, and I hope that 2021 will be the year that we could put 2020 behind us, and that we work closer towards the vaccine distribution. I've been trying to keep up on that, but it still looks like it's going to be end of March, I believe, for that, and just God bless everyone, and to a new year, a new beginning.
Thank you, Ms. Bagwell. Well, it's been an exciting year for me. Not my wildest dream as a kid living here that I think I'd be mayor of Hutchinson, Kansas, and it's an honor to be mayor of Hutchinson, Kansas, a city that I love very much. When I was a child, my dad was in the Air Force, and we'd come here every summer to visit my grandparents. And I've been all over the United States with the Air Force as a child. And I always told my dad when I leave Hutchinson, Kansas, I used to beg him to bring me back to Hutchinson, Kansas, because this is a great place to live, a real great place to live. We have good parks, we have good facilities here in Hudson. We have baseball, basketball, football, all that kind of stuff. And it is an honor to be picked to be the Hutchinson's mayor. I hope and I know that I have good fellow council members that have a lot of experience, though they're going to be leaving me here in the next couple of years, and I'll be losing experience, but I appreciate their help and help and understand with me, help me along the way. And I just want to say, if you ever want a place to live, come to Hutchinson, Kansas. It's a great place to live. And Jade, I appreciate all your leadership that you did, and I'm going to find out what you're going to go through. So, other than that, I would thank for the opportunity to serve as mayor. City manager, you got a report?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. We've got a doodle poll soon to go out, if it hasn't already, and it's for the selection committee pertinent to the human relations officer position. That group's going to include more people than we ever had before. We're trying to broaden that up so that we have every possible segment of the community involved in that process. You will find in that process that I won't be as heavily involved as perhaps the last city manager was, and there's a reason for that. There's been a lot of controversy around that, so I want these outside groups to really play a vital role in that. I'm looking forward to that. Also, yes, you mentioned the strategic planning session. Thank you. February 20th, we've got that coming our way. It'd be nice to have that under our belt. Also, the fire chief has put out a press release that we're going to have a controlled burn that's going to be going on for a period of time, mostly on the north side of town, January 25 through Feb 12, and that will be an ongoing situation that they'll be working, so be advised on that. Also, fire department, I do want to mention again, smoke detectors in the community. We're having issues there. We're responding to a lot of scenes where it's not battery issues in the smoke detectors. The smoke detectors just aren't there at all. So that's something to be mindful of. And if you need help with that, contact the fire department. They've got their information on the website, the phone number, and the contact person there available. And Jake, thank you for your leadership. You're an excellent ambassador for the city during my onboarding here at the city, and the real tricky time with COVID, not being able to actually physically go out and meet people. You were very instrumental in making sure I was linked up with those stakeholder relationships, and I appreciate that. It's been a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you.
Mayor, that's all I have. Thank you. I'll rest for questions.
On the strategic planning session, will that take place here at City Hall?
It will.
And is it at 8 or at 9? I had it at 9, but I saw on the
I hope it's
agenda
at
it was
9, and I'll verify that.
Okay.
I hope it's at 9 too.
Me too.
I thought it was at 9, but let me verify that. Well, Gosh darn it, counselor has bad news. Looks like it's 8 o'clock. It's just my report that I already gave him, but
Yeah.
let me stick that on.
Well,
Paul.
you're bringing the coffee, Jeff.
I will. Thank you, Paul.
How long do you anticipate needing for the executive session?
You know, we could meet for hours on end, or we could kick this thing off real quick, maybe a 25-minute session, and have a good idea as to what we're dealing with.
Try 11:10.
11:10, okay.
Okay.
I move to recess into executive session pursuant to the employer-employee negotiations exception KSA 75-4319B3 in order to discuss issues relating to 2021 contract negotiations with the city's bargaining units, the open meeting to resume in the city council chambers at 11:10 a.m.
I second that.
Ernest Carmella,
Yes.
Dave White.
Yes.
Soldner.
Yes.
Bagwell.
Yes.
Garza.
Yes.
I do need the two of you to sign your oath.
Okay.